if you look around the Dayton, Cincinnati area, most bands, with the exception of a few, are all our age. And when a new band comes out, it's just we take different people, and it's like you throw their names in a hat and pull it out, and there's a new band. There's not a lot of younger musicians there's a lot of YouTube artists out there that are phenomenal players. I don't know if they've ever played with a drummer or ever played with another musician, but boy, they can play online. They're just phenomenal technical players. And it's not just me that says this. It's like the way I just talked about Mike. There's not a lot of younger people coming up behind, our group of people to sit there, and where I felt like there's a way to leave a legacy to where you can sit there and be a mentor to somebody. The older you get, the competition side comes out, goes aside, I should say. So, everybody respects everybody for still doing it. I'm not the only 55-year-old guy out there playing music right now. There's a whole bunch of us. Matter of fact, that's pretty much all that's left. My bass player in my one band is 64. Now, he doesn't look 64, but he's 64. I mean, think about that. It's just the younger musician just isn't there anymore. So I don't even know. I mean, who's going to talk about live music in Dayton or Cincinnati, if it all goes away? There's not going to be really a legacy thing.
Yeah, it tells you about society and just the social pieces of things.
Yeah.
People aren't as social as they used to be, as far as getting together and getting in the garage and playing music, and then wanting to take that on the road. Either they're just as happy just playing in the garage and that's it, or just playing by themselves and that's it, or playing virtually with each other and that's it. They're not really wanting to take it out, and maybe it's risk of failure. A lot of these kids nowadays, they want that instant gratification, and they're probably adverse to failure. And everyone in our age group has, busting our noses and shins up and everything we've done in life when we're growing up. So we were used to it, but I don't know.
But we
I don't know what the
even
answer
see it
is.
the people that go see live music. There's not the younger generation that goes out and sees live music. I mean, when we play, and every other band around the area plays, it's 35, 40 to 60 that comes out.
Yeah, it's just social. I think social does just change.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I love the conversations like this because they remind us just how music isn't just about chops or gear. It's about identity, seasons of life, and just staying connected. Thanks for being honest about the highs, the stepaways, and just what keeps picking up what keeps you picking up the guitar. I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been a great time having you back on here. It's been 30 years, a little long, to get together. We'll have to do it sooner again. But thank you for joining the show.
Welcome to the Wired Garage with Pops. In our last conversation, guitarist Dave McCarty walked us through the gear, the gigs, and the tech that keeps him playing in the modern music world. Today, we're flipping the angle. This time, we're talking about the life behind the guitar. How you keep music alive when you've got a job, a family, and a body that's not 20 anymore.
And if you ever wondered whether it's too late to plug back in, join a band again, or just fall back in love with your instrument, this episode is for you. Dave, welcome back to the Wired Garage.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yep. At what point did you realize music had to coexist with everything else, work, family, and real life?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's just one of those things that I think, especially the older I got, you got to the point where, like Brian, we both played sports when we were younger. We did a lot of other stuff. You get to a certain age where you just can't do it like you used to. Music was always something that's been a part of my life. I've been doing it since I was 13 years old. And I look back, I can't see life without it. And, there's going to come a point in time where I'm not going to be able to do it at the level even that I do today, which is much less than what I did even 20 years ago. I remember joking with my wife, I think we were dating at the time. We started dating when I was 24. And I looked at her, I said, if I'm still doing this when I'm 30, shoot me. So 30 came and went, right? And then I looked at her, I
She
said,
must be
hey,
a
if I'm
bad
still doing this
shot,
when I'm 35,
or she likes you.
and 40 came around, and here I'm 55 right now, and still doing it. At least a couple times a month. It's just I can't imagine. And has it always been popular within the walls of the house? No, but it's also if I tried quitting once, and I sold all my gear, and 2 weeks later I got a call from a guy that got me in the studio. And next thing you know, like a month later, I went back and bought all the gear back. It's just I couldn't see myself not doing it.
Yeah, I used to play. I mean, you and I played for a little while, not as good as you, but before that, I played gospel music. I think over here, the shoulder here, there's an album back when I was 14 that we made, gospel music and stuff. And I played on keyboards, and I still got a keyboard over here. I've got my guitar I learned on when I was 6 years old up on the wall, but I don't play like I used to, and I try to get it out every once in a while. You lose it if you don't. It's not like a bicycle. You just can't just get back on it. And I think a lot of it also has to do, you have to feel it. Music isn't something that is just strict, almost like math. There's a feeling to it. And I got to garner that feeling again and get it going, get those juices going again if I'm ever going to get up to where I was, if at all. But I respect you keeping with it and everything. That's cool. That's cool.
Well, a lot of it is the people around you too. If you're going to play in a group situation, it's just as important to play with good people. And I refuse to get in a situation that is ever hostile. Growing up, you get in and out of bands where things just for one reason or another take a bad turn. You don't get along with somebody like you thought you would when you first met them and everything else. Now it's like, in order for me to play in a group situation, they got to be friends. They got to be good people, and I've been fortunate for the majority of my life to play with good people. I went through a period, actually, probably the bands I'm in right now, I'm still one of the younger guys, and that's weird to say at 55, right? But, when I was 16, 17, I was playing with guys in my 20s. And, I went on the road when I was 18, for a year. And all these people were 4 or 5 years older than me. And I look back on it and I'm like, boy, those are some of the best people I ever met at that point in time doing what I do, because they made sure I didn't made bad decisions. Never got involved in drugs, never got involved in all that other stuff. And these people always made sure that I stayed on that beaten path, stayed on the right path. And it's funny now, I'm still connected with some of these guys. Facebook, the one as bad as Facebook is for certain things, it's good to reconnect with people that maybe you wouldn't. Brian, you and I are a classic example of that. Facebook kind of brought us back together, and then obviously, but I've gone back and thanked these guys. Because when I was 18 years old on the road, seeing, geez, everything at that point in time, those people made sure I didn't get involved in it, and when I could have easily made that stupid 18-year-old decision,
Yeah, we just had some sessions about mentors, and we were talking in a tech realm, our professional realm, but even in the music realm, you're right, just being mentored in a band and in music, and maybe it's a manager of a bar or a venue that helped you along. Those things really do mean something in your life, and as you're going along in your decision making.
I got a pretty fresh picture on my Facebook page. I mentioned earlier about my drummer friend that had the brain tumor. We did that benefit for him. There's a picture of 4 of us sitting there, and 2 of the guys on there were huge early on when I was 15, years old, playing at bars and stuff like that. They were
cool.
Huge mentors to me. And the other guys, has been a friend of mine since I was 15. We kind of run the guitar path together for 40 years. There's a picture of all 4 of us together. That's the first time the 4 of us have been under the same roof in forever and a day.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, I went home and I told my wife, she goes, how'd the night go? And I was like, well, we did good things for, the benefit, but Let me show you this picture.
Yes.
Yep.
How do you carve out space for a guitar today? How do you slip it into your life?
A very understanding wife. When we first started dating, we've been together for 31 years. And when we first started dating and, a couple years beyond that, she was at every show, whether it was a Thursday night or a Saturday night, she was always there. As the years go on, it doesn't involve as much time, to do certain things, but it still involves time. And to me, the family life is more important than the music life. And, I've seen, friends of mine go through, hard times because their wives didn't quite understand what they did, or they didn't appreciate what they did, or they didn't respect what they did. I chalk it all up to her. She allows me to have that time. It allows me to have that, I guess you'd call it freedom, to be able to continue doing something that, is still a big part of my life. And she
That's
puts
a
up
great
with
way
me.
to
I
put
mean,
it.
that's the big thing.
That is a bonus.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking back, how has your playing evolved emotionally as you've aged? I think you mentioned this a little bit in the first one, but maybe you want to expand upon it.
Yeah, it's more about you quit caring about. I mean, when you're younger, I don't care what anybody says. If you're decent at something, whether it's music or whatever, it's very easy for ego to come into play. And especially as an entertainer or a musician, if you're good at what you do, you have that look at me mentality. When you get a little bit older, it's just your whole perception changes. You want to impress people in a different type of way. And don't get me wrong, when you get older, it's still entertainment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you wouldn't do it if you didn't want people to look at you and appreciate what you did. But it becomes more of a band thing. I care more about if somebody walks up and says how good the band sounds, how good the band is, or how good my singer is or my drummer is. I care as much, if not more, about that than if somebody comes up and wants to pat me on the back for something. Um, it's more important to be a cohesive unit than an individual, and that just comes with age and experience, I think.
Well put.
Does that kind of get into what you define more has changed your definition of success? Has that changed since your 20s? That's more about the band now. Has that changed, or have you always been that way? That it's always been more about the band.
When I was younger, and a lot of my friends will say the same thing. It's there's a lot of individuality about it. People would hop from group to group if they had a better opportunity. But, when I think you switch from thinking, hey, I'm going to be a rock star. I remember when I was 18 years old, graduating high school, my friends were going to college. I was going, I don't need college. I'm going to be a rock star. I hooked up with a band and I went on the road, traveled all over the country for a year. I look at my mom now and I'm like, you actually let me do that when I was 18 years old. I got a 24 and a 20-year-old. I would never let them do that. What my mom and dad let me do. Um, but it's you're only as good as your band. I mean, you look at the most successful bands. They weren't maybe the greatest musicians, but they were a good band. And I think when you're younger, you don't appreciate that. When you get a little bit older, you really appreciate it. Because like right now, the group that I'm playing with the most, they're all very, very talented. And it's not an individual thing; it's a group thing, and ultimately, you have more success that way.
So we mentioned this in the first episode. We'll talk about it a little bit more again, but you mentioned shredding was more of what you did back in the 80s. Do you play differently now, physically or mentally, than you did back 10 years ago? How have you changed? How have you evolved?
I think so. I think it's more of a, if you want to call it, more of a mature type playing. I really don't know what that means, but it sounds like a good term to use. And it also kind of depends on if you're in a cover band, which is pretty much all I do right now. You got to fit the
Whatever
music
that
that you're
song
playing.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, so we do, like I mentioned earlier, we do the Aces High thing, the Iron Maiden thing. That's more 80s style type music. So it's a little quicker legato type playing. The solos are meant to be um well, actually, that band taught me a lesson, because when we first started playing with them, I thought I could improvise or make up, the solos instead of playing everything note for note. I came to find out that Iron Maiden fans are the most finicky, most dedicated fans in the world.
I've
They
read
would
some
walk up.
I've read some of the posts on your guys' stuff and just people how they mention it.
Oh, if I didn't play it note for note, they would just, oh my God, you thought I just, you thought I burnt the building down. I mean,
Yep.
they were so upset. They're like, hey, what you played was cool, but it wasn't exactly what they played. And if you're going to be this and you're going to be that, you have to play everything note for note. And it sobered me up. And I
Yeah.
went home and I learned everything note for note. And I said, I'll never do that again. You know, the other main band I play with, we do a lot of 90s stuff. And, if, anybody, that's a music fan paid attention to where the 90s went versus the 80s and grunge came in, it wasn't a matter of being a guitar hero anymore. They just wrote really cool rhythms, really cool grooves, and they built songs around that. 9 times out of 10, there wasn't even a guitar solo in it. So, the band I'm playing with now, we do a lot of 90s stuff where, there's not a lot of room for that stuff. And to be honest with you, I'm just as happy because once again, it's the band mentality. The band sounds great and people appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, it is all about if you can shut the crowd out in a sense and just be you and the band for that moment and just play and enjoy it. That's what it's all about. Just enjoy playing with the rest of the members and just having a good, just playing music together.
I actually succumbed to the in-ear monitors thing. Yeah, that's a whole different world. You want to talk about, getting rid of the crowd noise and just being engrossed in the band. The in-ear monitors will do that for you.
Yeah. So if teenage you could see present day Dave with that guitar in hand, what would he think?
Remember, teenage me was going to be a rock star.
Yeah, you're still stringing it out.
Yep. Those damn plugins.
I'm telling you.
So maybe this is some advice for Brian. What would you tell the 40 or 50-year-old who's thinking about dusting off their old Strat and getting back out there?
Do it. Life's too short. If you enjoy it and it's something that would bring, that doesn't interfere with your everyday life, but still bring you some joy. I mean, Brian, I know you're a grandpa now, so like I don't have that privilege at this point in time, but you got to keep yourself moving forward, whether it's grandkids, whether it's a hobby, whether it's something. I even think, people that hit retirement age. I mean, I've seen so many people that have hit retirement age that just kind of let themselves just go, and I'm a firm believer in just having something that keeps you moving, keeps you driving.
Yeah, I've been thinking about picking back up, and a lot of it had to do with my middle daughter's husband has been playing guitar for a long time, and he, like you, he spends time. He gets home, he carves out time that he can play in the basement, and it's kind of his way of just mentally balancing his day, right? And then my other son-in-law, who's married to my oldest daughter, he's starting to learn the guitar because he's gotten with the other son-in-law back and forth, right? But his daughter, my granddaughter, has a keyboard and a guitar, but she has a keyboard. And it's just everything I've got. Just do I jump in and teach her how to play? I had lessons for different things. I never took to them very well. I don't know. It'd be nice to be able to play with my granddaughter, some music or something like that. The son-in-laws, just stuff like that, kind of mixing those two loves together, my family and the music, and just maybe have a July 4th cookout here at the house and jam a little bit. Who knows?
I got, a really good friend of mine that's in that picture I was mentioning earlier. His son is an accomplished drummer. He's got a studio in his house where, he's got an opportunity to sit there and play with his kid. I remember my son, this was probably about 6 months ago. And Steele, you'll understand this. I remember when I first started playing guitar, it seemed like it took me forever to be able to play like an open D chord or just any of those open chords and get them to sound just right. And then to be able to switch from chord to chord and just be able to be real fluent in that. And it felt like it took, oh my gosh, forever. So my son, who's never had an interest in music whatsoever, was walking by my studio one night and I said, hey, why don't you come on in here for a second? So I handed him one of my guitars and I started showing him like open D positions and G and stuff like that. And he was picking them up within like a minute or two and getting them to sound crystal clear. Then he was switching back and forth between the chords within, I'd say, probably 45 minutes.
Jeez.
And then I'm like, well, hey, because I mean, back in school they would play all those old '80s hits. So every once in a while when they come on the radio or Sirius or any of those other things, my kids would already know this. And one song he really knew was "We're Not Going to Take It" from Twisted Sister. So I taught him that open riff, and guess what? Within like a couple minutes, he's playing it, and he's playing it with good time. He's got good meter. He's got all this stuff and I'm like, wow, maybe this is hereditary. So then I started breaking out the Van Halen stuff. My wife goes, "Don't push your luck. He's not going to get that." But the next night, he walks by the studio. I was like, "Hey, you want to come in here and play some more?" He goes, "No, I'm good." And he hadn't touched it since. So I'm like, wow, obviously you got the natural ability. You just don't really care.
He doesn't care yet. I've had a daughter of mine come like in IT stuff. I've always told her, "You're going to be really good in IT." And she's, no. She went off and did journalism and now she's in IT support. I think your son one day is going to come back. He's going to say, "Dad, let's play guitar together."
I would love nothing more than that. I think
it'll probably have to be his
idea.
idea. That's pretty much how things work nowadays. It's got to be their idea.
Right.
How old is your son?
He's 20.
Okay.
Yeah, finishing up his second year of college. So he's focused on that. He works on the weekends at Dunkin' Donuts, and he's got $25,000 in the bank just working at Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow,
that's good. Be hard to kill him. It's gonna be hard to get him on a guitar when he's getting paid.
Well, Brian knew me, to at least an extent. I didn't have $25 in my pocket when I was.
Yeah, we didn't. No, we were pinching pennies back then, man.
Right.
But still getting the beer down and everything else. That was for sure.
So that's the company we work for, right?
That's right.
So when you think about the legacy that you're creating, both as a player, as the bands that you've played in, as a member of those different experiences, like the virtual band experience during COVID, for example, when people talk about that legacy and they talk about you as a player, what kind of things would they hope that they would say about your legacy there?
The craziest thing is, and this is something we were just talking about the other day too, when I was younger, there were bands all over the Dayton, Cincinnati area. I mean, you could throw a stone and find a venue that had a local band. And I always looked up to those guys, and I always wanted to be in their position. And we fought and we rehearsed and we did everything we could to be, playing those same venues alongside with those guys. In the same sense, those guys saw us coming, and I'm not saying they were worried, but they were like, well, wait a minute, we got some potential competition coming up behind us. So to this day, I play shows with some of those guys. I'll go back to that picture again. Third time I mentioned it, at that benefit. One of the guys in that picture, when I was 15 years old, they brought me up behind McGuffey's and said, "Listen to this guy." And there's a guy named Mike Harris. And Mike played in a band called Arch Rival around town. Mike he's nationally renowned. He's, had write-ups in magazines and everything. I'm fortunate to have him as a friend. And guys like me can look up to him and sit there and say, this guy was a mentor. This guy was not just a mentor to me, but he really encouraged other musicians. He was a teacher. He was a teacher in different ways, not just teaching you how to play guitar. He taught you how to carry yourself. Going back to that ego thing, keep your ego in check, type of thing. I worry about, from a legacy standpoint, there's no younger bands coming up pushing us. If you look around the Dayton, Cincinnati area, most bands, with the exception of a few, are all our age. And when a new band comes out, it's just, we take different people and it's like you throw their names in a hat and pull it out and there's a new band. There's not a lot of younger musicians there's a lot of YouTube artists out there that are phenomenal players. I don't know if they've ever played with a drummer or ever played with another musician, but boy, they can play online. They're just phenomenal technical players. And it's not just me that says this. It's like the way I just talked about Mike. There's not a lot of younger people coming up behind, our group of people to sit there and where I felt like there's a way to leave a legacy to where you can sit there and be a mentor to somebody. The older you get, the competition side comes out, goes aside, I should say. So, everybody respects everybody for still doing it. I'm not the only 55-year-old guy out there playing music right now. There's a whole bunch of us. Matter of fact, that's pretty much all that's left. My bass player in my one band is 64. Now he doesn't look 64, but he's 64. I mean, think about that. It's just the younger musician just isn't there anymore. So I don't even know. I mean, who's going to talk about live music in Dayton or Cincinnati? If it all goes away, there's not going to be really a legacy thing.
Yeah, it tells you about society and just the social pieces of things. People aren't as social as they used to be as far as getting together and getting in the garage and playing music, and
Yep.
then wanting to take that on the road. Either they're just as happy just playing in the garage and that's it, or just playing by themselves and that's it, or playing virtually with each other and that's it. They're not really wanting to take it out, and maybe it's risk of failure. A lot of these kids nowadays, they want that instant gratification, and they're probably adverse to failure. And everyone in our age group has, busting our noses and shins up and everything we've done in life when he's growing up. So we were used to it, but I don't know.
But
I don't know
we
what the
even see
answer
it the
is.
people that go see live music. There's not the younger generation that goes out and sees live music. I mean, when we play, and every other band around the area plays, it's 35, 40 to 60 that comes out.
Yeah, it's just social. I think social that's just changed.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I love the conversations like this because they remind us just how music isn't just about chops or gear. It's about identity, seasons of life, and just staying connected. Thanks for being honest about the highs, the stepaways, and just what keeps picking up what keeps you picking up the guitar. I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been a great time having you back on here. It's been 30 years, a little long, to get together. We'll have to do it sooner again. But thank you for joining the show.
Well, absolutely. Once again, thanks for having me.
For anyone listening who used to play and hasn't touched a guitar in years, I hope this nudges you a little closer to plugging back in. I'm Steele. This is the Wired Garage with Pops. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.